Hey, it's Matt Pinfield, and my guest is the amazing Stone Gossard, who really doesn't need an introduction, but we'll be talking about a lot of different things with Stone. Stone, it's so great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Matt. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm really excited to have you, Stone. I mean, there's so much to talk about with you, and because it's been a while, since you and I've run into each other. Like I said, I've been to shows, but I mean, due to COVID restrictions, and of course, just in general, with all things that with touring, protocols, I haven't seen you in a long time. But I've been really excited because a lot, you've done a couple really cool things in the last year or so. With your very first band, you released your band from when you were a teenager. The thing that you did with Duff McKagan and some of your other friends, you put out that record, right? Which you had, literally.
Yeah, and I didn't play on that, but I was around kind of right after that record cut made. I mean, I think that's the living record predates me by almost a couple of years. I was still thinking I might want to try to be punk rock at that point. And that was a really fun record to put out because Duff McKagan is kind of the king of Seattle when you think about his history here and making that record, being involved with Tim and a Warning, and then going on and doing something even beyond anyone's wildest dreams with Guns N' Roses. So that was a work of joy to be able to kind of be involved in. One, hearing those living tracks after nobody had heard them for they literally were like, nobody had heard any of that stuff for almost 30 years. And then to be able to put that record out and then get a chance to talk about Duff McKagan and how ahead of his time he was and how his influence in Guns N' Roses, you could hear it in that living record. And in 10 Minute Warning, you can kind of hear his sort of melodic and groovy, punk rock sort of grinding that he does so well. That was a lot of fun.
It was great, and of course it was really evident in great songs like "It's So Easy" by Guns N' Roses, which was so
Oh my
punk rock.
God.
When I heard that, I was like, "This has a Dead Boys overtone." I was
Oh
really
my
into
God,
it,
completely. Yeah, I mean that was my favorite stuff of Guns N' Roses, the stuff where you can tell his influence, his aesthetic about songwriting. It was just down and dirty. It wasn't, it didn't have that sort of glam rock kind of thing. That glam rock is great, but at that time it was like it just had overplayed its hand for so long that it was just, everyone was ready for something else. So between Guns N' Roses and Jane's Addiction, that was like a real amazing period of time to kind of like be listening to music for
it
sure.
was because it was a new revolution. It was like those two bands were so important in kicking the door down for
Yeah.
what was to come next. Hey, so I mean, I could do it a couple different ways with you, Stone. I could go in time order, or we could start by talking about Painted Shield and Loose Groove, and then I'd like to go back through some historic stuff with you because there's so much that I love. You know what I mean? From Green River to
Yeah, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. I'm easy.
which is great. So, well, you know what? Then maybe we will kind of go in order if you're cool with that.
Yeah,
I
sounds good.
talk to me about being a kid and and learning to play guitar. And I know that Jimmy Page is a big influence on you, but what was the thing that made you want to pick up the guitar when you were a kid?
Well, I didn't pick up a guitar until I was about 16 years old, so it was pretty late in the game, and I went to a alternative high school that was really arts focused, and it was a scrappy at the time, a really scrappy kind of some teachers trying to basically run their own school. So it was a little bit punk rock on its own, and it had a bunch of alternative kids there that were just either misfits or just couldn't, didn't fit into public schools for whatever reasons, or they wanted to be artists. It was like right when Fame came out. So I think there was a lot of that sort of, everybody was like thinking about either, well, wanting to wear leg warmers for sure. I mean, I knew that was big, but there was lots of guitars around and there was bands being formed at school. And I got to meet a lot of people, Alex Shumway from Green River, Steve Turner. And these guys were fully immersed in punk rock and were loving this music that I had had some exposure to, but really not that much. And the exposure I got through those guys was that you got to get in bands, and you don't need to take lessons to play guitar. And it's all about do it yourself. It's all about, finding your own song, or figuring out what you can, what you can do with your buddies. And that was the big appeal to me, was that, I didn't feel like I had any real talent or any sort of particular skill that was developing that was making me think, oh, I know what I'm going to do in my life. And I was, at the time, 16 years old. So the idea that I could pick up a guitar without too much pressure and come up with a few riffs, and immediately started kind of writing. And that was something that I could kind of do pretty easily, where I could play something and remember it. I was good at that, and I just had a little knack for arranging and picking up on stuff that I dug, and just kind of, I don't know, finding something that I like. So I was just in bands right away. And from that point on, all bets were off. That's what I loved, being in bands. And I was never the star. I was never the lead guitar player. I was never the sort of, anyone that was doing anything spectacular, but I was kind of in there grinding away and trying to come up with cool riffs and taking in what I could from other folks around me. And the rest is just sort of like a continuation of that. Honestly, it hasn't changed much.
Right, which is so great. So I gotta say, like, when I was discovering, the Green River EP, the first, and when I realized, I mean, immediately what grabbed me is, I'm like, wow, they cover Bowie's Queen Bitch and Ain't Nothing to Do. That must be the Dead Boys song, right? So I was like, wow. I go, I think I'm gonna really like these guys. You know what I mean? I'm as a guy, an outsider who didn't really know what was going on. That was cool. That was taking that punk aesthetic too, when you're working with
and in Seattle at that time, it was like, that's what was happening that was so exciting, that was kind of thrilling, was that the walls were kind of coming down. There was 80s, industrial bands. There was, folks that were digging all, Soundgarden was playing Bop by the Ohio Players. It was like there was this sense that you could go anywhere with music. And I didn't grow up with that, in the grade school and stuff. It was always very, if you liked music, it was one kind of thing, or, so it felt thrilling to be involved, where you were introduced to the concept of kind of art in general, and that art was something you could take colors from anywhere and mix them together in your own way. And that you were in a community of people that were supportive of amateur folk art. You know what I mean? Like, nobody was any good, or, some people were good, but it was always mixed in with, the chaos of everybody else. And we were all, drinking beer and getting wild and having fun. And it was just a thrilling, creative time to kind of like, anything goes.
And that's where, I mean, it's amazing now that I think about when you told me that, meeting guys like Steve Turner in school, from Mudhoney, of course, and, and the guys from Green River. Talk to me about forming Green River and how that started, and coming out of that scene at that period of time, and when you knew you were ready to make a record.
Oh, I knew Steve and Mark just a little bit. And, I had been playing guitar, and I was messing around, and had either played guitar where, either Steve saw me or did something. And Green River was already a band. They just said, we know you've got a guitar, and maybe you want to play guitar in this band too, or whatever. So I got invited to do that. And then just immediately just kind of started, writing, riffs for that band. So I was, that wasn't something I started. That was something I was invited to.
What was it like? I mean, where did you first meet Mark Arm? Where did you guys first meet?
Clubs, probably the Metropolis, which is a Seattle club, where a lot of shows were happening. You'd see the same faces at these shows. So, seeing bands like Tales of Terror, or Agent Orange, or I'm just trying to see, and immediately, as soon as Green River started playing, we were opening up for like the Dead Kennedys and Black Flag, and we were kind of getting shows right off the bat. So it was kind of in context of sort of the touring scene of kind of indie music alternative new wave punk rock kind of in Seattle. So the bars and the clubs and the small venues that were playing that kind of stuff, and the folks that were kind of going to those shows.
It was great that it was such a community, you know, and because, you know, people have said before, would you agree with that? It's because it was, you know, remote and it was far from LA. It was, I mean, Seattle was its own thing. People were always out supporting each other in different bands because that was the thing to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't know any better, you know, honestly. It wasn't that, you know, there's not people that weren't, you know, it wasn't some idyllic, you know, everybody supports each other and there was no shit talking, but it was like there was a pretty limited amount of clubs, and you went out and drank beer and partied with everybody. And so there was a sense of community in general, that you were all going to go to the shows, and if somebody was, you know, kicking butt, you'd be talking about it. So yeah, there was a naivety to it, and it was in LA, and nobody expected that it could be anything more than, hey, maybe there's a guy named Bruce Pavitt who's doing a singles of the month club, and maybe we could do, you know, a 45, you know, or I heard the U-Men went to New York City and played a show, and they took a school bus there, and they went actually on tour, you know, and it only cost them, you know, 10 grand to do that, or whatever. But that was the level of, you know, sort of excitement, and we didn't know any better. So it was that post high school, I can't quite figure out what I want to do with my life, you know, period of time that is, it's a fleeting, important period.
Really, it's an incredible period. So in that period, what were some of the albums that were really important to you at that time, Stone? Like I mean, literally, some of the punk albums when you got to school and you were into that, and you know, what were some of the other classic things that you love? What was the cross section of music that you
You
were
know,
into?
it was, you know, Dead Boys, Subhumans, you know, Alice Cooper. It was always that sort of genre bending. Iggy Pop, by, you know, hugely. The Stooges, like that was like constantly being played. The Stones, you know, sort of a lot of, you know, trippy 60s, 70s. It was kind of all over the place. So, but those would be big ones, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about too with forming Mother Love Bone and that period of time and how you met the other band members. Talk about how you met Andrew. Let's talk about Jeff. Let's talk about the guys, if you can do that.
Well, Andrew was playing clubs. He was playing the Metropolis with
Yeah.
Malfunction. So I met both Regan Hagar and Andy and Kevin at that time, and they were mind blowing, and were one of those, you know, again, playing discharge speed punk rock,
Yeah.
and also big halftime grooves that, you know, the Melvins ended up sort of really, you know, adopting and sort of going for. But, you know, you know, not being in the spirit of like glam rock and punk rock being blended, you know, again, it felt thrilling to kind of see that. And you know, it was, you know, it was, in a sense, it was like embracing this taboo. It's like, oh, you can do those things together, and sort of, you know, meeting people of, you know, whether it's transgender people or just people that were completely different walks of life, and you know, the gay community, you know, sort of a lot of that sort of cross section of folks all hanging out and all sort of being part of it. It wasn't like it was all being talked about, but it was like you were experiencing sort of a broader swath of humanity, and really everybody, you know, thinking that, wow, this is cool. This is like, there's something great about, you know, that being, you know, exposed to that, and seeing the beauty of it all. So, you know, seeing Andy play, you know, meeting, you know, Jeff through Green River, and then Green River at some point sort of, you know, kind of running its course, and thinking about Andy and his range, his, you know, he would do these, you know, instrumental songs, and beautiful, delicate little ambient, you know, tapes that were completely like Brian Eno or some kind of, weird sort of,
Yeah.
but also humorous and hilarious. And his range was like so broad. It was like, I can do fast, hip, full punk rock to, glam, ambient. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
really, it really was anything. And he was so joyous and thoughtful. And so we, getting chances to play with him, and again, it was just like, what's next? What can we do next? So started writing with Andy and spending time, Greg Gilmore, who was in, 10-Minute Warning, the drummer in Seattle, convinced Greg to come and play, because 10-Minute Warning had left and Duff went to LA, and Greg came back, and there was an opportunity there. And so, again, really the first year of Mother Love Bone, really like having a great time, really like finding this, some new territory there. So that was really amazing time. And, and I think, a lot of it stems from Andy's personality and his charisma and his, his joy. We were all just along for the ride in a lot of ways.
It was great to see. And I love that you talk about that mesh of the original glam rock with the punk rock, because you're right. That was such a great period, too, when you talk about Iggy and you talk about Roxy, Bowie, T-Rex, like that period of 70s glam was so great. You know what I mean? So many great songs. Even Alice Cooper, like you said, the original run of Alice albums, and with the original band was so great, the $1 Billion Babies band, incredible. Right? I mean, those are things that we certainly loved growing up, and I think it's cool. It was amazing. So, and the output that you guys did with Mercury Records was great. But I remember talking to Michael Goldstone, your A&R guy, when he was saying, and the tragedy of losing Andy, and then just Mercury Records just not. Michael told me Mercury just didn't treat him right, and like just didn't have any real feeling for the band, what the band was going through at that time. Talk to me about that, like when you lost Andy. I mean, that's obviously, it was an unbelievable tragedy, and we've seen a lot of tragedies all the way up until this past week with Taylor. But where did you feel yourself at that time, Stone, when you were getting together with the guys going, what are we gonna do now? What was your feeling at that period of time? Because obviously Mercury Records had they weren't being supportive, from what I've been told.
The record company paid for our record to get done. We could have made any record we wanted to, and I think we made a pretty good one. We definitely could have, had I known then what I know now, we would have made that record a lot differently in terms of how much we should have been able to make 3 records for the price that we spent making that one. But our singer died, so I'd never felt any animosity towards the record company for not, jumping up and down and saying, hey, let's do something else. Or, I don't think anyone felt that way. It felt like a car wreck. You're just like, what are you going to do? You got to, figure it out. So, as far as, at that point, for me, the hook was set. I wanted to be in bands. I wanted to make music. I wanted to, keep exploring what's possible in creative collaboration. That's where everything that's ever happened, good for me, has been in context of other people and in sort of massaging and sort of helping collaborative situations grow. And I wanted to continue to do that. And I felt like I had a talent for, arranging and songwriting and just, being in bands in general. And so, it wasn't too long after Andy passed away that I was already thinking about what was next.
Yeah, and with writing those first instrumental demos, how soon after that? Was that pretty soon after that? Just in a cathartic way. Hey, I'm going to keep creating. We're going to write some stuff and figure out.
I mean, I was writing all the time, so I mean, I'm sure I was picking my guitar up right away and recording into a micro cassette, recorder. Just trying to remember little bits and pieces and try to make some arrangements. And so, that's always been part of what I do,
which is
as
great and
much,
continued
as
to
much as
do.
I can.
Yeah, which I think is great in what you continue to do. And obviously at that point, when you guys met, were introduced to Eddie, right? Jack Irons was he the catalyst for that? Tell me about. Can you remember, Stone? I mean, I'm sure you do, but what was at that first meeting with Eddie? When he came up to Seattle, what was that experience like for you guys?
Well, we first heard music from him, and it was, kind of stunning. I think it was stunning for a couple reasons. One, just his voice, and just the tone of his voice and where it was coming from was so different than what we were typically sort of expecting, from singer tryouts, that immediately it was just like, you knew that it was special, and that it was different, which was even, maybe as important or more thrilling. And then, clearly the lyrical content and the depth to the poetry was, you could tell right away that there was something that, that he really cared about words, which is, I think that there was a understanding from me, pretty limited in terms of how much poetry really plays a role in elevating certain songs to that sort of next level. And I think I always thought, well, if the singer has a good voice, or they got to have a couple of hooks, and the rest of it is just kind of rocking out. I think that that's the lesson I've been learning ever since, is the impact of not only words, but the syncopation and the rhythmic sort of overlay that you get between a piece of poetry and a piece of music, and how that kind of can bring both things to life. And so already you could tell that he really had a strong sense of word. His understanding of lyrics was really strong. And then meeting him, immediately, is very, very humble and thoughtful guy who, he brought us all little gifts and would, write letters to us, and, stay in touch, and like a sensitivity from him that I think we were all just sort of, kind of longing for, but, it wasn't our strongest suit, probably. And it was a breath of fresh air in regards to just having a band member that really felt, just really felt like he came from such a genuine place in terms of his sensitivities, and I don't know, his awareness of other people's feelings. And he was a very thoughtful guy. So
I mean, Stone, we always, we know that you guys just loved playing. I remember you were in San Francisco when you're still called Mookie Blaylock. You were doing some shows around with the old name, just getting out there, for a while, and getting exposed to people before you changed the name to Pearl Jam. But I mean, not in a million years could you expect a debut album like that to have the actual impact that it did, because you guys just loved playing together. There was always that thing that I could tell from the very start. You guys just wanted to be able to play, continue to be on the road, and do what you do creatively. What was that when it did?
That's the best way I think we could hope for. I think we would say that because that's what our job was. Is like, look, we just want to just help us make a record, and we'll go out and tour it, and we're gonna, we don't know where this is going to go or what could possibly happen, but we know to do anything, we've got to keep moving forward. So I think I think it was a stressful period of time. It was we were ambitious. It was there was times where it was but once we got going with Pearl Jam, and energy started to build, and we felt the first inklings that this was something was moving for us after after some struggles and sort of 10 years of some successes, but they were sort of mostly internal successes. They weren't necessarily outward ones. That it felt really good to kind of have that a little momentum, beginning, and to be able to do it with with Eddie and Mike, Mike, who I'd known for years, before even before Green River, to have his involvement, and then his unique superpower, blended in terms of his ability to kind of elevate and do something particularly improvisationally that just sort of would make the music sort of soar in a way that I was never able to do. So it was a fun time, and but a stressful time and a anxious time as well.
And then of course you followed it up with an album that was as great as the first album. I mean, for me, 10 and Verses was an incredible record too. And, it wasn't like, I mean, I don't know how much time it took to write all those tracks, but to follow up that record was a perfect album for me. Love that record, and I just
yeah, that's, I mean, it's probably as it's probably one of my favorites of Pearl Jam's, and it was a unique period of time, kind of the height of our powers in a certain way. And we've written a lot of great songs since then, but I do love that record as well. And that at that point we'd had some success. So at that point we were like, okay, now we can get kind of busy. So, that was the first record that we made with Betty that was really sort of more of like, let's build it from the ground floor together, as opposed to having a bunch more kind of arranged things that he would just sort of sing over as is. So, and it was also the first record with Brendan O'Brien, who was an incredible breath of fresh air for us, in terms of producers and in terms of somebody who moved quickly and kept things light and loved natural sounds and was, enthusiastic, and who was very, very talented, in terms of his ear, his mixing, his tempo, and how he worked, and being able to get the best out of all of us, so he played a major role in that record being as good as it is.
Yeah, Brendan's great. I mean, I still see him all the time out, and he lives out here now, which is cool. And he's just, love to talk to him about making records and about,
Yeah, he's a wonder. For sure.
He's absolutely incredible. We should also, I'll come back to the Pearl Jam stuff a little later, because I want to talk to you about working with Matt Cameron too, because I love the fact that Matt's been in the band now for a long time. And there's that whole connection. Well, maybe I should just bring it up now. I love there's that Soundgarden connection too, where you and Ben Shepherd, who I thought was like, once he joined Soundgarden too, I mean, they were always a great band, but it was like it got into that groove. Tell me about you and Ben Shepherd when you guys were young, because you knew each other years ago, right?
Well, I was in a band with Ben Shepherd for a hot minute. I mean, like I literally probably 4 rehearsals or maybe even less. But let's see, what's the name of the band? Monkey Seeker, and I can't even think of the band name. Oh, it's terrible. Anyway, John Evison, who is now a prolific New York Times bestselling author, was the singer, and March of Crimes was the name of the band.
Yeah.
And Ben Shepherd was writing these wicked guitar lines, and I didn't know he even played bass. I mean, he must have played some bass too, but he was a guitar player in that band and had this great what was it? I'm trying to think of the guitar name, but it had these tiny thin necks, and then everybody started getting him too. But beautiful guitar player. So he had all kinds of little tricky lines that were just lovely. So I played with Ben Shepherd, but it was like there was 200, 100 people in the punk rock scene, and you were going to run into all of them at some point, and probably either be at a rehearsal or be in a band, or almost be in a band with all of them at some point. So, but it is a funny story, and pay attention when you're young, because the people that you're, hanging out with might play a big role in everything that comes after. So, I don't know if that's a recommendation or not, but it's been an amazing journey in terms of how the connections from the past continue to sort of inform what's going on now.
And I think it's great when Matt Cameron, of course, joined the band as well. And Matt's just, such what an incredible player and an incredible human being too. Just fits so well because he's such a, he's a kind, really smart, music loving. I mean, everything about that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about when Matt joined the band and how it just felt like a natural progression for him to be in there.
Well, I think, it all building from us, Matt Cameron being the greatest drummer in Seattle and going to see Soundgarden shows and just, hearing Hunted Down for the first time on a Sub Pop single and just having your jaw just, not only did they now have the greatest drummer in the world or, one of them, but Chris Cornell went from being kind of a screamer to suddenly being like, channeling some kind of, demonic singing superhero that was, not only perfectly in pitch, but, from the depths of, some, depths of hell, from the depths of hell. And you just like having your mind blown, seeing Soundgarden and the power of those grooves that they came up with and all the time signatures and all the unique qualities they were encouraging in each other. Again, they really worked with each individual in that band to kind of form something that was, truly unique. And it's by that, that sharing and that collaborating and that trusting of everybody's superpower, whatever you want to call it. But Matt Cameron, and then, Temple of the Dog, which was, the single most sort of generous, thoughtful gesture of probably of anyone, in my life in terms of Chris sort of writing these songs for Andy and then asking us to be involved in this record and giving us the opportunity to kind of, play those songs with him and let us play with Matt Cameron. And we made a record in, 10 days or whatever it was. And you listen back and it's still one of the greatest things we've ever been involved with musically. And it took, it didn't take any time at all. And we didn't have to think about it, and it reminds us over and over again that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to take a bunch of time to make something great, but you do need to, I think Chris being motivated by his connection to Andy and his longing to help us heal and to build community, that's where the power is. And that's, you can unleash that and the music retains that, I believe, so, you start with a bigger picture and you can really make something timeless. And I think that's kind of where that record comes from. So having played with Matt with Temple of the Dog, and then, it was an obvious opportunity, he wasn't playing with Soundgarden and Jack was not able to tour anymore. And it was an easy idea to come up with, and the timing was right. And, Matt's one of a kind. He's a true artist. And we're still, in my mind, we're still trying to make the definitive Matt Cameron record. And that, hopefully that's coming still, where it's like, I want to, write songs that build up from, his grooves and go from there. And we're still trying to figure out how to do that. So that's my secret wish, is to make the Matt Cameron record.
Which is great. He's so great with you guys. With that making of the Temple of the Dog album, you guys had Pearl Jam at that point with Eddie had a few rehearsals before that moment with Hunger Strike, right, where he and Chris sang together, and it was that situation. You'd rehearsed a few times. Tell me about that magical moment, because it was unreal how, the story about Eddie kind of offering to, and not in like I've seen Eddie interviewed and talked about it, where it wasn't in an egotistical or way in any way at all, because that's definitely not Eddie. But he walked up and saw Chris was struggling with a little bit of how to finish that vocal, and what they did with Hunger Strike. What was that feeling like that day?
I don't know the story of what the conversations were before Eddie being involved in that, in that song. I had assumed that Chris invited Eddie to, come up and sing, and I didn't know that they might have had some conversations before in terms of if Chris was having a moment where he wasn't quite sure how to finish it. So that's news to me. But, I mean, it was a blur. Honestly, we made that record so fast. I came in one day and, I think Ed had sang on it, and we listened to it and went, wow, that's so fucking great.
Yeah, it's like the two of them together.
Let's do more of that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I would have dropped it all right then and just like, been in Temple of the Dog. Why not? Ed and Chris together. They could have been, it could have been literally the greatest band of all times.
Yeah. So great together. Absolutely. I want to also talk about around the time of the late 90s when you launched Loose Groove Records. I think that this was really cool. When I found out you were doing it, and then I found out you'd signed this band that had guys, that were involved with Caius and the desert rock scene. I was blown away. So, I heard that first Queens of the Stone Age record, fell in love with Regular John, If Only, all those songs.
Oh my God, totally.
Right? I just went, whoa, you know what I mean? I was blown away. And so talk to me about you putting together with Regan and deciding you're going to do a label. Kind of give me the history of where the idea came from to do Loose Groove Records.
Well, I think my relationship with Regan Hagar is central to my, creative life. I spent a lot of time in the early 80s listening to his record collections, just digging on, Prince and Parliament and Queen and Bowie and all these, bands that I'd never really connected with before, and really sort of, hugely broadening my musical palette, and just talking about art a lot. And he was in Malfunction, then Andy was with Mother Love Bone, and then after Andy died, and Pearl Jam started to get some success, ended up making a record with Regan and Sean Smith and Jeremy Toback called Brad
record. Which 20th Century,
which
all those great songs.
was trying to kind of do the same kind of thing. It's like I knew Sean was an amazing singer, and I knew that there was an opportunity to make some music with him, and we invited this guy Jeremy Toback, who was just a friend of a friend who played bass up, and I said I'd never even heard him play, and we were like, we're going to make a record in a week, and we're going to rehearse for a week, and then we're going to record for a week, and we made that first Brad record. So I was feeling it back then in terms of like just figuring out different ways to kind of bring different artists together and try to express something, and so through my experience of all my relationship with Regan, and success with Pearl Jam, I really wanted to, we thought, putting a label together would be cool because we had friends and bands and we were making records, and we thought this would be cool. And so signed Weapon of Choice and Lonnie Marshall, who's, got a single, who just has a song that just came out on Loose Groove last week called Parking Lot. Amazing Lonnie Marshall track. So I'm still going back in time, kind of connecting with the same folks that that I met back in the mid 90s. But yeah, and we did that for a while, and I think Queens of the Stone Age was sort of the high water mark and then at that point, I think I just personally really needed to like stop taking on more things, because I was overwhelmed with sort of a personal, responsibility, and needed to change my life for whatever reason. And then, a couple of years back, started talking to Regan about it again, and we just dove back into, because you go back in time and you find your old friends and you figure out excuses to hang out with them or talk to them, or and this was our excuse to get back together, is relaunch Loose Groove through the Orchard, along with our new partner Billie Jean Cerullo, who's just amazing.
She's great. Yeah, she's awesome. And I gotta say, even I love that even back then you put out Nash Cato's record, because we all love Nash.
Oh
obviously.
My God, I love Nash Cato.
Yeah, Urge Overkill and Nash, so great, right? I mean,
No, he's I dream about another Nash Cato record. So Nash, if you're out there, let's Let's figure it out
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, because that was great too. I love that you did that. But and I've got to say, with it's so great that you've decided to relaunch the Loose Groove. I want to talk about Painted Shield because let's talk about. I mean, Mason Jennings, he's been making records since like '98, and he's put out some really cool stuff. I played him over the years on the radio in New York and San Francisco, and so I loved when I found out you guys were doing this band together. Talk to me about him, Brittany Davis, Matt Chamberlain. Let's talk about everybody that's in your new other band, your side project, because it's really it's a great, cool lineup of people. Talk to me about how everybody came together and how you discovered the other members of Painted Shield.
Well, Mason and I met through his ex-manager, Dan Field, who's an old dear friend of mine who I had met through, on Lollapalooza. He was the tour manager for Ministry, maybe, or like, I think that's what he did. And was a good friend of Ed's as well, a Chicago guy. And we were chatting, and he just said, well, I'm working with this artist, Mason Jennings, and you should, you guys could do something together. And we talked about it, and we recorded a few songs, and we did a little, single, and I think we put out, 50 copies or 100 copies or something. And but we just kept, over the years, kept in touch and kept talking about doing more songs together. And we recorded maybe, 4 or 5 that weren't quite as good as the single. And then at some point we decided that we were going to finish it and worked on it. And I would send him some demos, and some of those demos had Matt Chamberlain on them. And as we were working on finishing some of those songs, started connecting more with Matt and saying, Matt, you want to do something else? And we kind of ended up finishing that very first record, just me and him. And in that process, Loose Groove had signed and was working with Brittany Davis, who's this incredible Seattle songwriter, piano player, and keyboardist, just beyond awesome, instrumentalist and singer-songwriter. And because of all this sort of, like, I got a bunch of stuff going on, everyone ended up playing on this, this first Painted Shield record. And we got it done, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And as we were sort of finishing that record, Matt Chamberlain started sending me some of his demos. And from those, it really was, okay, now this is a whole nother level, because Mason started writing over the top of Matt's, and Brittany Davis started writing. And suddenly Painted Shield 2 is this much more collaborative effort that really involves a lot of both Brittany and Matt as well. And Matt Chamberlain, who is one of the, greats of all times, like insane drummer, musician, but also an insane songwriter. And we're fortunate enough to like have this opportunity to help bring to light some of his arrangements and his grooves that he would, write with. And it's been a thrill. It's just, again, it just kind of stems from you start something, and the power of that thing is enhanced with strategic sort of partnerships. And this was the case of like, well, if let's hear everybody's songs, like we're not just, the first record is cool, but the second record's even cooler, because it really has a more depth to it. And it's we've got a record that's, probably 70% done, a third record at this point already. So all bets are off, and Brit's releasing their own record right now. And Brittany's going to have a Tiny Desk performance coming up here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think. That's unbelievable, playing with Kat Dyson from New Power Generation, and a couple of folks that played with Beyonce, and these amazing all-female band that's going to blow your mind, like crazy great. So look for that as well.
I love that you I know that you're a big fan of soul music as well. Like I'm the same way. Like I like a lot of old funk and soul and bunch of stuff. I know that your musical taste is all over the place, isn't it, Stone? I mean, you listen to a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm a dad first and foremost right now. I got 4 kids, so my musical taste tends to go towards pop radio right now because that's what we're listening to a lot. But toggling back between KEXP and top 40 and hip hop, that's all. I love it all.
Yeah, I mean, you've always been super open to all that. We should also mention that you signed this great band Tiger Cub from Brighton, who are a trio, and that's been a really great hotbed lately. I mean, Royal Blood are one of my favorite bands that came out in the last 7 or 8 years. When that debut album came out, those guys, the duo, are from Brighton, and so when I heard Tiger Cub for the first time, I was like, "Well, this has kind of a Royal Blood vibe," and then I found out they're from Brighton as well. You know what I mean? When I thought of Brighton, I'm sure Stone, I always thought of Quadrophenia. You know what I mean by The Who? Because that's where, or Brighton Rock by Queen, which is funny. It's such a great song. As a kid, I never knew what Brighton Rock was when I had sheer heart attack, but I remember going to Brighton, and then somebody explained to me, well, Brighton Rock is rock candy on the pier. And I was like, oh, so that's what Queen were talking about. You know what I mean? I had no idea about all that stuff.
Club? I don't know that either. Is that a club, rock candy?
Yeah, no, it's right. Well, no, it's actually rock candy, meaning like the candy that you eat, but it's like that form. Yeah. So Brighton Rock by Queen is named after like a kid's candy that's on the pier. Right. Crazy stuff. You know what I mean? I just never knew any of that till I got older and actually traveled to England. But it's just so cool. But Tiger Cub, being from Brighton, they've got a great vibe. I mean, tell me about that band. Are you excited to have those guys?
Billie Jean, Regan and I's partner at Loose Groove, played us some music, 6 or 8 months ago. Maybe it was a little bit more than that now. And we were just like, she was like, this band is bubbling under and they're awesome. And Regan and I just were immediately like, yes, we need to do this. How do we figure this out? And, contacted the band and just let them know how much we care about them. And we just signed a deal probably less than six weeks ago. They're on tour right now with Clutch, playing a bunch of dates all over the US. And I'm actually going to go see him here in a couple of days. So looking forward to that. And, Jamie, the singer songwriter is artistic musical force. I mean, it's insane. His heaviness is, first and foremost, really loves hard rock, incredible lyricist, incredible singer, and also can write a beautiful quiet song. So he's right up my alley. I like those singers that can kind of do it all. I just have really high expectations for this band. I think that they're, given the opportunity, they're gonna blow people's minds. So we're really fortunate to have been able to sign them, and looking forward to they're going to start recording a new record here for Loose Groove, in the next six weeks or so, and it's on.
That's great. On. I got to say, Stone, it's amazing. Like Eddie's new album, Earthling, his latest solo album, was fantastic. And of course, every time I go see Pearl Jam or I see him solo, he's one of the greatest singers of all time. I mean, he just always emotes. It's just, you guys played together so many nights. But I also love the fact that you'll do Painted Shield. Jeff would do a side thing. You guys were always cool and had a great relationship. Best friends with Soundgarden. So when Matt Cameron was in both bands, it was always so cool. Is that one of the keys to longevity and success, besides the fact that you guys are brothers and love each other, but that you're always cool with each other, stepping out and doing other things because it keeps that creative thing going for you?
Yeah, I mean, as far as not being able to, it's weirder that you wouldn't be able to step out and do things, and I think it's a throwback from like kind of 70s rock or something where it was just like, it was maybe more possessive back then in terms of like, it's like thinking about Keith Richards, it was tense between Keith and Mick when he did Expensive Winos or something. It's like, well, why not? Like, I mean, Jesus, Expensive Winos are fantastic. I mean, why wouldn't you want him to do that? So I think we kind of went into it with the idea that we were going to trust each other, and that we're brothers, so we're family. So what are you going to do? There's that side of it too. It's like, well, you've already kind of committed to each other, so to make a big deal out of it takes a lot of energy too. So it's not like we have perfect relationships. We resent each other and get mad at each other and have issues. But I think just the DNA of how we came together as a band, in terms of like, we're here to share. We think based on our experiences, like if you bring things together and people together, you want to bring out the best in everybody. I mean, that kind of DNA of really wanting to have a band that shared is still there, and it animates us still to this day. And you can share a lot in Pearl Jam, but all of us are writing songs all the time, and not everything is appropriate for Pearl Jam. So it's actually probably a relief to Eddie that we all have things on the side, because then we're not like, okay, did you hear this that I did? Did you hear this that I did? Did you hear this that I did? Did you hear? The sort of everyone pestering him for his attention. You want Ed feeling like excited about what you bring to the table. So you want to save a few nugs for him for sure, but it's good for all of us to get out.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Before we wrap, I just got to say, you guys have become like one of the most important, and with the longevity, a band that can tour, change their sets every night. I mean, we talk about bands in the 70s, right? People have said, well, it's kind of like we consider them kind of the Grateful Dead of the alternative rock era, because they, how bands would change their sets and decide what to do every night. But it's a beautiful thing, because you guys, again, the longevity, the passion of your fan base, is that the thing that keeps it exciting for you too, Stone? Is the fact that you are able to change the sets every night and go out there and play, a certain, focus on some songs, but to change things every night? Is that one of the things that you say part of the success?
It's a treasure now. And I think you really, it's something you got to kind of commit to as a band, because there's certain nights where if you just went out and played, you're out there struggling through some B-sides and going, God, can't we just play that? We just need to play some hits right now. And we'll do that. But you really have to kind of commit to that as your, thing, is that it's not every night. It's not the most important thing every night to play your biggest songs always. It is to a certain degree. There's certain songs that you will play, but that creating space for something unique to happen at a show is something that people care about, and over a long period of time, it really fosters a sense of loyalty and connection. And we're so thankful that our audience and our fans stuck with us through this and trusted the process, and have grown to sort of, I think, cherish that process with us. So we're truly lucky ass MFs to be able to do what we're doing, and to still be doing it, and to have stumbled through in some way that we made some good choices that ended up being they end up being good choices. So we're lucky, and again, some of this stuff was kind of built into kind of how we started the band. So I think there's a lot to be said for your intention around how you do things, and when you're collaborating, or whether you're starting a business or a band or anything, any kind of creative endeavor with people, building in that sort of ability for people to play roles and to be, to elevate themselves and to kind of be part of the bigger picture, I think it's something to aim for, I think.
Yeah, it's true. Stone, I want to tell you how great this has been. I mean, I love talking to you, and I love talking to you about music and your history, and I'm really excited about Loose Groove relaunching. I mean, that was just, when I heard that, I got really pumped, because, obviously, when the first Queen's album, Nash, all the other stuff that you did, I was just like, oh, it was a really, it made me really happy in my heart. I was like, this is cool. I'm so glad he's doing it.
Yeah, and, I want to maybe we'll try to re-sign Queens. That'll be there.
Yeah.
Huge. I want to get in a bidding war.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. But listen, Stone, thank you for taking the time. It's really great to have you today. April 22nd, it's Painted Shield 2, the new album. And And like I said, we'll be out here supporting all the things that come out through Loose Groove. I can promise
Matt,
you.
and congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award you just got there. That's pretty amazing. So good job on all your endeavors. You're plugging away and making an impact yourself.
Thank you for that, Stone. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I was really humbled by it, but it was pretty incredible. So
was it a fun night for you?
It was an incredible night.
Nerve-wracking?
It was extremely nerve-wracking, man. It was like, because it was like the president of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce with the Walk of Fame award, then the mayor of L.A. and the city council did a proclamation, with this hand-painted proclamation, and did a speech, and then Andy Schoen, who hired me at MTV, presented me with the International Rock Icon Award. It was amazing for me. I
love it.
Super nerve-wracking, but
I love it. Well, you deserve it, Matt, and you've stood the test of time. So thank you so much for all your efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Stone. Thanks as always, man. It's so great to see you. And we're really excited about Painted Shield 2 and everything you're doing with Loose Groove. And, of course, Pearl Jam, who we love. And, just continue to make great music, put out great records, and do these shows that are just every show is an incredible event, an emotional event for fans. And I think that's great. So thanks, Stone, for everything.
Thank you very much.
All right. It was great catching up. And I'm really happy to hear we're both guys with kids, doing our thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I can't stop having kids.
Yeah.
Oh, where am I? Oh, yeah. No, I'm
not. But Stone, I know you're busy. I know I thank you for giving me this, being so generous with your time and giving me this hour. So, but it was awesome.
Thank you so much, Matt. Have a great day.
All right, Stone. You have a great day too. I'll see you again soon. Absolutely. Thank you. Stone Gossard. Love him. Love Pearl Jam. Love the new Painted Shield. Loose Groove Records. Check out everything that's coming out from that label. From KLOS, new and approved, I'm Matt Pinfield. Thanks so much for joining us.